The word for I in Hebrew is ani. But in the Ten Commandments, it doesn't say ani, God, your God who took you out of Egypt. It says anoichi. Anoichi is an acrostic for 4 words in Aramaic. Ana, nafshi, kisavis, yahavis, which means, if our Aramaic is rusty, it means I put myself in the writings. God is saying, anoichi, ana, nafshi, kisavis, yahavis. When I'm giving you the Torah, I'm giving you myself. And when a tzaddik is giving us his work of Torah, he's giving us himself. Why are we learning Tanya? Or what do we gain from learning Tanya? Or as I just said, this class was started in Tafshin Nun in 1990. It's been going on basically almost every single Tuesday night since 1990. And exactly at this time of year, we are so close because we probably started the first Tuesday after Shavuos. And now this is the Tuesday right before Shavuos. Why did we start the class then? Because Lubavitcher Rebbe had given an instruction on Shavuos asking for everyone to start a class and just be Torah. Torah should be happening and flowing because everyone should give a class. And that means we've been doing it for 35 years, which means we have just completed the Tanya for the 5th time. And some of you have been there since the beginning. Some of you have. 35 years, a long time. And some of you joined at various points. Having already, if not for 35 years, at least for some bit of time, invested yourself in studying Tanya, why? What does it give you? What's the point? Why are we doing the same thing 5 times over when each time takes about 7 years?
It helps us to serve Hashem.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts on why we so emphasize this? And what have you gained that makes it worthwhile to start one more time?
It helps you to become more refined in whatever, in your learning, in your dealing with people, in your beliefs, and everything. It's just amazing.
I agree. Anyone else?
I think when you learn, you don't learn the same thing. Hopefully you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Each time there's more to learn. So you hopefully get into a whole new reality every time you learn it.
Right, for sure. I could say that for sure. Absolutely. Certain things just hit you on a deeper level. And I find this with all learning, when you learn the same thing again and again, if it's anything we learn cyclically, it could be Chumash, it could be Tanya, it could be anything. And then it's like, now you're hearing it and like, wait, I've learned this before, but now I'm hearing it. Now it's affecting. Now it's real. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
This is Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
I joined the class in the middle of the last cycle, and I'm looking forward to start from the beginning.
From the beginning. And what did you gain in the part of the time that you were here for thus far?
I think the biggest thing that I learned for myself is how to get closer to Hashem, to understand better who I should be, how I should.
Absolutely. Where we should be, how we should be. One of the Rabbeim once said that contemplation is knowing where you should be, where you must be, and where you are. And if you could think where I should be, and then where I okay, gotta be, must be, and then where I am, that's already giving you a good benchmarks for serving God. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this? Everyone here has been learning Tanya, so everyone must have some reason why they're back. Lisa?
Hi, yes. So I started learning, I think it was 4 years ago, maybe, started at chapter 16. So I was excited to start from chapter 1. And I've just gotten so much out of it, especially in dealing with getting stuck in a depressive mode and being able to pull myself out of it by changing the channel, so to speak. And also dealing with difficult people that happen to be Jewish and how I can look at them differently. And if nothing else, even just speak to their soul when I have to be with them. And just to love my fellow Jew to the best of my ability.
That's a lot of gains.
A lot of gains, yeah. So I'm excited to see what else is in store.
What else is in store? I started learning Tanya when I was in seminary. I grew up Chabad, but I didn't go to a Chabad school. In those days, it wasn't really the thought of like, if there's a good Jewish school in your hometown, why would you send your daughter away? So I convinced my parents to send my sister away when I came back from seminary. She went to Crown Heights, but I learned in wonderful Beis Yaakov for 14 years. And then I went to seminary in Israel, in Kfar Chabad. I went to the Lubavitch Seminary. And that was the first time I really learned Tanya. And for me, it was unbelievable, unbelievable. I felt, obviously, it would have been nice if I had been learning this, like, since I was, 14 or 13, but maybe when I was probably more about 18 then, it affected me even more. And I really felt like a light go on, like a light in my soul that was so strong, that was so powerful, that I think for me, and everything everyone said is true, and I agree with everything absolutely. And obviously, I really believe in this because, like I said, we've been doing this for 35 years. That's a big chunk of time. And to me, I would really phrase it as, for me, Tanya makes Hashem real. The more I study Tanya, and I agree with Froma, the more you study, the more you study. Like, you're never done, because every time as you learn it, things affect you more deeply, and you understand them more deeply, and you feel them more deeply. It just makes Hashem very, very, very real. And then when Hashem is real, you can have a real relationship with Hashem. I can really love Hashem, or really fear Hashem, or really have awe of Hashem, because Hashem's not a word, a concept, something in the books, something you talk about. It's like Hashem is real. That probably is how I would most phrase it. Sort of connecting this to it's the Devar Malchus, the most recent talk the Rebbe said on this week, Bamidbar, before Shavuos in 1991. And the Rebbe there is focusing on why was the Torah given on Shabbos. The first Shavuos, the first giving of the Torah, 3,337 years ago, was on a Shabbos. And it's one of the few things there's no argumentation on. Everyone agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbos. And the Rebbe focuses on that concept and unpacks the idea of how Torah and Shabbos are both the concept of peace, of bringing us to real inner peace. And we live in a world of so much flux and change, and you're here and then you're not. And this world nowadays is even more than it's ever been. You have your job today, you might not have it tomorrow, maybe you'll have another one the next day. You live here, then you move. We're a transient society. We have lots of transient relationships. Things are moving, and that creates a lot of lack of peace. That creates a lot of disturbance to being in a space of peace. And then you have Shabbos. Shabbos is like that little island oasis of time where it's peace. We're not moving. We're not going anywhere. We're not allowed to go. We just are staying in this space of connecting to Hashem, of absorbing the peace on the inside. And really, that's what Torah does for the world. Torah gives the world peace, because Torah gives the world our reason for being. The Rebbe says that when we have so much chaos, flux, change, movements going on, all of these things are very disturbing to the human psyche. But when we know why, we can handle all the what's. We can handle all the details. We can handle all the changes. So when we have an overarching mission, sense of purpose, vision of why I'm here and what I'm doing here, if we existentially understand our existence, we have such a peace. We have the peace of a sense of purpose. And then everything that happens to us can come within that frame of reference, and it's okay. It doesn't shake us. It doesn't disturb us. We can handle it. We can maintain our own integrity and our own inner peace, because it's all within the frame of why I'm here. And why am I here? I'm here to serve God. And that's the gift, that vision of what we're in this world for, why we are here, what we are doing here, that we received with the giving of the Torah 3,337 years ago. And every year it gets renewed that vision, that clear sense of purpose, what I am doing in this world. And I think in my head, I'm connecting this to the Tanya because, as I said, at least for me, the Tanya makes Hashem so, so real. And my relationship with him, like Rachel said, my love of him, so, so real. So when that is so real and so strong, that creates the inner peace that allows all the details of life to be okay. And I think Tanya gives us sort of what Lisa was saying, a lot of tools, a lot of strategies in our toolbox to handle all the flux and change and surprises and challenges of life as we know it, of life now. It's actually interesting. I saw very briefly someone post on a status, like I turned on for like a second and whatever, moved on. But it was somebody, and I can't say who, some doctor, scientist, that was saying they had done empirical studies and they found that people that have, I don't know if she used the word religious, probably used the word spiritual, maybe she used the word religious as well, a religious life that's very strongly a part of their life, the religion, the spirit, there's something different going on in their brains. It's thicker in certain places, and they find that extra thickness, like protection of the brain in those cortexes and those areas, really enables the people to handle life, to handle stress, to be able to deal, not to fall apart, not to be overwhelmed because of this extra thickness in the brain they have found empirically in people that are committed to a religious or spiritual life. So we don't need them to tell it to us, but it's just a little more how everything trickles down into the physical reality as well, that as we're studying, as we know why we're here, we can really have this inner peace and do whatever God sends our way, knowing he's the one sending it our way. It's all from him. It's all part of the reason why we're in this world, and to rejoice that we're in this world serving God. And that's why we're here. And we're so fortunate we know it. So many people like existential questions. Oh, this is what makes you crazy if you're a teenager, if you're having a midlife crisis. But we know why we're here. We know what our purpose is. We know what we're accomplishing. And everything that happens in our life comes within that paradigm of it's part of my unique, specific mission of making this world God's home, of bringing Mashiach. And when I'm focused on my mission, and I know every detail is all deliberate design for me to fulfill my mission of serving God, of creating for him a home in this world, of bringing Mashiach, of actualizing the reason why my soul is in this world, whatever I'm doing, it might be crazy on the outside, but I can feel that inner peace. And I think the more we study Tanya, I think, at least for myself, the stronger is that inner peace. The stronger is that sense of purpose of why we are here, and that, yes, we are accomplishing it. Something else that I think is really special about Tanya, and is sort of like woven throughout so many of the ideas in Tanya, is understanding who you are. So Tanya definitely helps us understand who God is and makes that so real. Like, can you love a parent you never met? Can you love a parent that's just a word? So the more Hashem is so real and we feel him in our life, the more we have that relationship with him. But it also shines the light on who we are. And one of the most foundational premises and innovations of Tanya is you, in essence, are a piece of God. That's who you are. Every single Jew. The essence of the Jew is not a war between two forces. No, that's not our essence. The essence of the Jew is a piece of God. The essence of the Jew is a soul. There's an angel sent to flex our muscles called the evil inclination. There's a spiritual force called an animal soul that has various missions and jobs. But that's not who I am. Tanya says, you're not a composite of evil and godly. That's not who you are. You are a godly soul. Every single Jew is a piece of God. The core of my soul is from the core of God himself. That's my self-definition. I am a piece of God. And that concept, which again is woven throughout so many themes in Tanya, I think is so transformative, because how can we achieve what we're supposed to achieve if we don't understand who we are? If we don't understand how powerful we are? If we don't understand how special we are? It's like, how many people without Hasidic thought, without Tanya, without having absorbed this one way or another, look in the mirror and think, yeah, that's a piece of God. You know? Most of us look at ourselves and see our shortcomings. We see our flaws. We see our failures. We see our limitations. That's like being normal. And Tanya says, look in the mirror. You're looking at a piece of God. That's what you are. So the final thought at the end of chapter 53 was this purification and refinement, the charring away of the evil bit by bit, by service, by service, by service. And the initial premise, which flows throughout all 53 chapters, is you are a piece of God. It's very interesting because, Tanya, of course, is this work of theology, this foundational. We literally compare it to a Sefer Torah in terms of its foundational power. So in this foundational theological work, the Alter Rebbe never once convinces you. He never tries to convince you the reality of God, the reality of soul. Like, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking to Jews, the Alter Rebbe is saying. I'm talking to divine souls. I'm talking to the most godly force there is. I'm not convincing you there's a God. Like, that's not our discussion here. I'm not convincing you you have a soul. That's our discussion here either. I'm guiding you so you can access your soul. I'm guiding you so you can have a relationship with God. But your basic beliefs, you're a Jew. You're a piece of God. You're God's only child. And I really think the more we internalize that very simple message, it's very, very, very transformative. The more we look at ourselves and understand who I am, not only through Tanya am I understanding God, is God becoming real, but I'm also becoming real. I'm becoming real in terms of who I really am, not how I define myself. It's sort of like by Mashiach, we're told that all of the evil will be gone. There's a verse, it's biblical. Right? This is from the scriptures. The spirit of evil will be, the spirit of impurity will be gone. God, will remove it from the earth. So who will you be when all your evil is gone? How will you look at yourself? Well, if you've lived all your years defining yourself by your lacks and by your problems and by your failures, you don't even know. You have no clue. That's not how you view yourself. Tanya is saying, shine the light on who you really are. And if you live up to who you really are, the evil will take care of itself. Actually, that concept of shining the light is in general how we look at Hasidus. There's two different vignettes that happened with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. One was in Europe. One was when the Rebbe was already in America, in New York. Very, very similar stories. In both situations, I'll take the story from New York, but almost the exact same thing happened with a different group of people in Europe. So there was some people, and I think there were students in Yechidus, in a private audience, and they said to the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, it's like, what do you need Hasidus for, so to speak? Like, what does Hasidus have? What does Hasidus give? You're already a religious Jew. Like, what do you need it for? You have Torah. What do you need Hasidus for? And the Rebbe didn't answer. And instead, he pointed to a picture. I might be actually now saying the story from Europe instead of the story from New York, but it's the same point. This definitely is what happened in Europe. He pointed to a picture. I think it was in a hotel, and he pointed to a picture, and he started admiring the picture and having them admire the picture. And they're appropriately admiring the picture. It's a beautiful, magnificent picture. And then, if you remember in the old-fashioned pictures, there's like a little light on top of the picture. Remember my grandmother had one like that in her house? He turned on the light and suddenly, oh, wow. He said, now do you see how beautiful the picture is? I said, oh, wow, yeah, now we can really appreciate this picture. And then the Rebbe said, that's what Hasidus does. Hasidus isn't the picture. Picture is Torah, the picture is already there. You have the picture. But Hasidus shines the light on the picture, that you can really appreciate the picture. When Hasidus helps you internalize joy, prayer, devotion, intention, when, like Lisa said, loving another Jew, these ideas are all Torah. But with Hasidus, the light is shining and you really get the beauty of that picture. And I think, I can definitely say for myself, Tanya does that so strongly. It's shining the light that all of these ideas of Judaism are so strong. And as I said, so real. So I was getting some votes up as we were talking. So it does seem that the general group is looking to start over. So we will. And again, I'm sure I will definitely gain one more time, excited one more time. I know there's things I'll understand that will finally click that haven't thus far. We're looking at Tanya, a little historical background to understand a little bit what we're going to be learning or relearning. So Tanya, when we're connecting to Tanya, we're really connecting to the energy of the Alter Rebbe. We say in Hebrew, Admor HaZaken, and we say in Yiddish, the Alter Rebbe, and we say in English, the first Rebbe of the Chabad Hasidic dynastic movement, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi. Why are we connected to the Alter Rebbe? Well, in general, we know that whenever we're learning any work of a tzaddik, his energy is in his work, because tzaddikim, it says, tzaddikim doimim leboiram. The tzaddik is similar to God, to their creator. And that's how God operates. This is very Shavuos timely. When God gave us the Torah 3,337 years ago, and he's giving us the Torah again this Monday, and I hope everyone will be in synagogue and get the Torah. You want to be there when he gives it. When God gave us the Torah, the first word of the Ten Commandments is I. I am God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. The word for I in Hebrew is ani. But in the Ten Commandments, it doesn't say ani, God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. It says anoichi. Anoichi is an acrostic for 4 words in Aramaic. Ana, nafshi, kesavis, yehavis, which means, if our Aramaic is rusty, it means I put myself in the writings. God is saying, anoichi, ana, nafshi, kesavis, yehavis. When I'm giving you the Torah, I'm giving you myself. And when a tzaddik is giving us his work of Torah, he's giving us himself. I actually see this very poignantly with the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, that before he was passing away, and he passed away at a very hard time in Russia when the communists were taking over. It was very difficult, very critical. And his only son, who became the Rebbe after him, was like, don't leave. What are we going to do? How can we? I'm saying my own words. I don't think he exactly said it like this. But this was his point. Like, how can you leave us? What's going to happen? How are we going to survive? And the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, said, Ich gehe zu Himmel. I'm leaving. I'm going up, going to heaven. Aber die Ksavim lass ich für euch. But the manuscripts, I leave for you. You're telling me don't leave. I'm leaving, but I'm leaving you my writings. And we could say, okay, thanks a lot. What does that help? But this is the point. When a tzaddik gives us his writings, he's giving us himself. He's invested in those writings. So as we've been studying Tanya, wittingly or unwittingly, we've really been developing a connection with the first Rebbe of Chabad, was Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who is a direct descendant of the Maharal of Prague, who was a direct descendant, could trace his lineage all the way back to the Gaonim, who could trace their lineage all the way back to Solomon, the son of David. So this is very powerful lineage. This is the lineage of Mashiach. And Tanya really is written to bring Mashiach, right? This is what the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, was told when he had an ascension of his soul on Rosh Hashanah. He said he went all the way up to the chamber of Mashiach himself, the Messiah. And he said to the soul of Mashiach, Emasai Kasimar, my master, when will you reveal yourself? And the answer was, when your wellsprings, you, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, when your wellspring spread to the outer reaches, then Mashiach will come. And when the Baal Shem Tov recounted this to his brother-in-law, which is how we know what happened, he said that it was almost like disheartening, because his wellsprings, he's in some area of the Ukraine, his wellsprings are going to spread to the entire world. His wellsprings will spread to the outer reaches. So that was from the beginning the mandate of Hasidus, and definitely Chabad Hasidus took this very strongly. So when the Alter Rebbe, who's this direct line of Mashiach, is investing himself in Tanya, is giving us himself, is giving us the Tanya, this is to fulfill that furthest outreaches of the world and outreaches of man. We're transforming our hearts, we're transforming our minds. We ourselves are those outreaches that are being changed, and through this we're reaching out to the furthest parts in the world. And today, definitely the entire world has been flooded with Hasidus, with Chabad Hasidus, and is totally ready, and as we would say, over ready for the complete revelation of Mashiach. The Alter Rebbe started writing the Tanya, okay, get this, I can feel really old when I think of this, when he was 26 years old. Now, obviously, the mind of the Alter Rebbe is not like, our minds to fathom how a 26-year-old could start writing the Tanya. But he began when he was 26, and he wrote it for 20 years. For 20 years, he was laboring over the Tanya very, very, very carefully, truly thinking into literally every letter. There's an incident that once says for 6 weeks, the Alter Rebbe was contemplating one letter in the Tanya. It's in chapter 41. It's a Vav. Vav is one letter. It means the word and. And he was contemplating for 6 weeks. Is it appropriate? Is it right? Is it more right to write V'ikra V'sharsha and her mainstay and her roots, or Ikra V'sharsha, her mainstay and her roots? After 6 weeks, he added the Vav. That's how precise the Tanya is. That's how much it's in sync and expressing the divine. So that was 20 years to write the Tanya. And then, starting with Rosh Hashanah of Tafkuf Nun, the Alter Rebbe began giving it over to the Hasidim. That year, that Rosh Hashanah actually coincides with the birth of the Tzemach Tzedek, of the third Rebbe of Chabad. That Rosh Hashanah is when the Alter Rebbe began giving over as a series of Hasidic discourses, the Tanya. And that took all the way until Tafkuf Nun Daled. So Nun, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, Nun Gimel. It took a bit over 4 years. Because on the 10th of Kislev, which is maybe about, a little bit towards the beginning of the 5th year, the 10th of Kislev of Tafkuf Nun Daled is when the Alter Rebbe finished giving it over. So a little over 4 years it took the Alter Rebbe to teach his Hasidim the Tanya. And at that point it was not written, and the Alter Rebbe did not want to write it. He had it, he did not write it. He said it orally. So how did anyone learn it? Well, as he said it, afterwards, maybe during, probably afterwards, I imagine, the Hasidim wrote it down. And then people copied those manuscripts. And then people copied those manuscripts. And then people copied those manuscripts. And that's how the Tanya spread. That's how the Tanya was taught. And that's what the Alter Rebbe wanted. He did not want it to become this official book, printed, published. He didn't want that because he's teaching such holy, holy, holy ideas, just barely like pulling it down into this world, pulling it all the way down into like a written book. Like imagine mine here, like something like this. No way. We're going to leave it a little bit hovering over planet Earth. But that situation did not last that long because opponents to the movement of Hasidus took advantage of the situation and started forging copies of the Tanya where they inserted deliberate mistakes. So now suddenly we have lots of copies going around, and they're putting out and they're selling for a very cheap price forged, distorted Tanyas. So now that's being spread. Well, what's the real Tanya? Who knows? I don't know. This is what I'm reading. This is what I'm reading. Well, and then the Alter Rebbe said, okay, we've got no choice. We have to print this. We have to clean it up of the mistakes that have crept in, and we have to print it. And it was not easy in those days in Tsarist Russia to print a Torah manuscript, to print a Jewish manuscript. There were lots and lots of miracles that are associated with the printing that I won't share now, but many miracles happened until the Tanya was finally printed, which Alter Rebbe really wanted to be printed for the passing, the Stalkos, the yahrzeit of his Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich, which is on the 19th of Kislev, and it was finished on the 20th of Kislev, which we know was very impactful 2 years later in the story of Yitches Kislev. And it was finished the 20th of Kislev. The Alter Rebbe actually didn't even get it, in those days in Russia, until the second day of Hanukkah. So it took a little bit of time, a little bit over a week before he actually got it physically in his own hands. But there was a tremendous persecution from on high with the printing of the Tanya. And there was a lot of prices that had to be paid for the printing of the Tanya. Some of us know the story of the daughter of the Alter Rebbe that gave up her life when she sensed these prosecutions against the Alter Rebbe. And then, of course, the Alter Rebbe himself ultimately was in jail for 53 days. Not jail sounds too nice. It was very, very harsh Tsarist prison, the prison for the worst rebels against the government, a prison time where the pending decree was a removal of life. And he was there for 53 days, not coincidentally, because of the 53 chapters of Tanya that he wrote. We know this not only because we can make the association 53 days, 53 chapters, but actually we're told that when he was in prison, he was visited by his teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich, and by his teacher's teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. They had him say a Torah for them. He spoke to them and he said, "What am I here for?" And they said, "For spreading Hasidus like this, insanity. You printed the Tanya?" And he's like, "Okay, so should I stop?" They said, No. When you get out, that means we won. We were vindicated. If we won, you're going to spread even more. And that's why it's very clear. There's a very clear demarcation, Hasidic thought, from until the imprisonment of the Alter Rebbe and post the imprisonment. And post the imprisonment, the Hasidus is much more open and revealed, much broader, much fuller, because we won. So why do we have this, as we call it, kitrug? Why is there this prosecution against doing something as holy as writing the Tanya? And if we actually look back historically, this is the second kitrug the Hasidic movement experienced on such a level. The first one, we're told, was in the times of the teacher of the Maggid, the teacher of the Alter Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich. At once, a number of the students of the Maggid were discussing the whole approach of the Maggid to teach the secrets of Torah. Meaning the secrets of Torah were always secret. That's what they're called, the secrets of Torah. They were given with the Torah, but they were secret. The first time they sort of came public was the generation after the destruction of the temple. That was the generation of Shimon Bar Yochai. And at that time, the whole Jewish people were taught Kabbalah, the inner dimension of Torah, because they needed it to survive. But from the giving of the Torah until then, it was secret. Very, very few people knew it and told it to very, very few people. And after that one generation, it basically became a secret again and was passed on from a few that knew to a few that knew to a few that knew, all the way until the time of the Arizal, of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who lived in Tzfas in the 1500s. And he said, now we're supposed to spread it. This is what we need to do to bring Mashiach. And he started teaching publicly. Now, of course, what publicly meant in those days, he's in this little corner called Tzfas, the holy city of Tzfas, with all the holy, holy, holy Jews there. And that's the public. He's teaching it publicly. And then after him began a series of 4 Baal Shems. Baal Shem, if you've heard of the Baal Shem Tov, Baal Shem Tov means the master of the good name, which means God's name. So Baal Shem Tov refers to someone who is so holy and so learned in the inner dimension of Torah, he, so to speak, has mastery over God's name. There were 4 Baal Shems that followed after the Arizal, after Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. The 4th and final was Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, who went public. Meaning until that time, the Baal Shems were, some were more public, some were less public, but all of them were trying to strengthen the inner dimension of Torah, and basically were teaching an inner circle of disciples, very, very holy, holy people, who then went out, sometimes overtly, most of the time covertly, to help the Jewish people. And that was the first Baal Shem, and the second Baal Shem, and the third Baal Shem. And then we had the 4th Baal Shem, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem. And he was given the mission to go public, to take Hasidus and bring it to the world. And that's what happened. And then his successor, the Maggid, continued this even more. And now we have the students of the Maggid discussing this. And like, not that they were criticizing their teacher, I'm saying it in my words, which I'm sure are far coarser than how they said it. But basically, in very simple words, like, is this right? Is this appropriate to take the God's inner secrets and share it? And then they saw a piece of paper that had writings, notes, we would say, from the teachings of the Maggid, and it was on the floor. And they were like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. This proves it. This is wrong. How could we take God's inner secrets and it's rolling on the floor? And at that moment, who we refer to as the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who, to put it in perspective, was the youngest of this entire group of students, he took the floor and he said, no. We have no choice. And for them to understand, he told a parable. He created a parable. And the parable was, and I'll say it very briefly, I know it's a little late, I know many of you know it, but the parable was of a king who has his only precious son who's deathly ill. And no doctor in the world can save this son. And finally a doctor comes and he says, well, I actually know something that might cure the prince, but it's probably not worth it. So what do you mean? If it might cure the prince, it's definitely worth it. He said, well, there's only one medicine in the world that can work, and that happens to be grinding to dust the central stone of the crown of the king. So we're going to destroy your crown, and we're going to take that stone, and we're going to grind it to dust, and we're going to dilute it with water, and we're going to try to get it into the mouth of the prince. And in his current state, I don't know if he's going to swallow anything. It might just spill out. But if he can swallow some, it'll help. And it could save his life. And the king said, you're such a fool. You're a brilliant doctor, but you're a fool. What's my crown worth if I don't have my son? And they ground up that stone, destroyed the crown, diluted it with water, and are trying to get the prince to drink, to swallow any drops from this medicinal liquid, from the crown stone, from the king's best, strongest crown. And that, the Alter Rebbe says, is what's going on now. The Jewish people are in such a state. We just had these horrific, it's called the Gzeros Tachvatat, Chelmanitsky, massacring, ransacking the Jews. The Jews are fainting. They're done. They're so weak. And then we had the Baal Shem Tov. And now we have the Maggid. And yes, they're taking God's inner secrets. And yes, they're grinding up that crown. And yes, they're diluting it. And yes, some of it's spilling on the floor. But they're doing it to save the prince. And for that, God says it's worth it. And when his fellow students heard this, they really got the story and they accepted his vision, and that yes, the Maggid was correct in spilling the secrets of God's innermost Torah. And some of it falls on the floor. But it's what you got to do to save the life of the prince, to save the Jewish people. After this incident, the Maggid told the Alter Rebbe, you saved me. What you heard going on down here, that discussion among the students, was echoing the court case above on what I was doing. And your answer, as it was accepted by the students below, was accepted by the court case above. So the Alter Rebbe, years before, saved Hasidus from this heavenly decree, from this heavenly prosecution. So what's happening now? Well, what's happening now is the Alter Rebbe is going a lot further than the Maggid did. The Alter Rebbe is not only trying to revive and save the Jew, the body of the Jewish people, from complete spiritual and physical annihilation. the Alter Rebbe is pushing a lot more. The Alter Rebbe is, as we said, he's bringing Mashiach. So he's much, much more, to a much greater degree, spilling the secrets of the king himself. And therefore, his saving the Hasidic movement some 20 years before, it's not good enough because you're going past that. We know the prince is going to survive. What you're doing is way beyond. And that was why we had the sacrifice of Dvar Leah. That was why the Alter Rebbe himself sat in prison for those 53 days to work through this newer, harsher prosecution against spreading God's secrets. But we won. He came out. He emerged victorious. He was vindicated. Hasidus was vindicated. And as he was told by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, when you're out, spread it even more. So we are going to start, not next week, because next week we get the Torah. So we'll be in a much better place because we'll have received the Torah one more time. But we are going to start, as I see was a popular voice from the beginning, understanding with hopefully some of the ideas that we said today. I know for some people it was ideas you're very familiar with, and for some people it might have been new, but just putting in the frame of reference what this Tanya is. This is what the Alter Rebbe almost lost his life over. Sacrificing, because he knows it's not just like general Hasidus. We got to save the Jews because otherwise there's physical and spiritual annihilation. It's much more than that. We're bringing Mashiach. We're not only as general Hasidus reawakening the heart of the Jew to God, we're getting the Jew's mind, because that's what the Alter Rebbe did with Tanya. He took these deep inner secrets of God and he translated them to the vernacular. He made them something our human minds can comprehend. Almost everyone here has already learned Tanya. You might have understood everything, but you comprehended a lot of secrets of God. That's what the Alter Rebbe did. That was the sacrifice. That was the risk. That's why there was this prosecution, because he's taking God's secrets and he's sharing them, not just to reach our heart. He's sharing them that our mind understands the secrets of God, because this is an inner process. This is creating for each one of us like an inner geula, an inner redemption. And that's why Hasidus works. And that's why, as some people said, when they learn it, they change. They change if, as someone said, know how to deal with a difficult person, know how to handle our conflicts and our stresses. We change on the inside because our minds are holding the secrets of God. That's what the Alter Rebbe risked his life and the Hasidic movement for, that we have these tools and that we can fulfill that vision that the Baal Shem Tov shared, what he saw in the chamber of Mashiach. When will the Master reveal himself? When will Mashiach come? When these secrets, when the well springs of Hasidus, when the secrets of God are flooding the world, they're comprehensible to the minds of man worldwide, the world's ready for Mashiach. That's what the Alter Rebbe did, and that's what we will have the privilege of learning. For some of us, I'm very confident we are starting now our 6th time. Very, very special.
My question is, why didn't all this Hasidus spill out during the time when the mystics were in Svat, such as Isaac Luria? Why didn't it come out then? Why did it have to come out 300 years later? Go ahead.
It's a great question. Basically because this is a process as the world is marching toward redemption. To take your question and phrase it like in the classical way is sort of like expressed as, well, if Hasidus is so important, as we're claiming it is, why wasn't it always around? And if it wasn't always around, like, what do we need it now for? Or as you're saying, if the mystics, if Isaac Luria in Tzfas, he began revealing Kabbalah, why wasn't he given the ability to reveal Hasidus? Right. By the way, Hasidus is not Kabbalah for the layman. Hasidus is a different slice of Torah. Hasidus is the inner dimension of Torah, totally different level than Kabbalah, but obviously has commonalities. So he's already revealing Kabbalah to the world. Why wasn't he the one that could reveal Hasidus? Why was it, like you're saying, some 300 years later with the Baal Shem Tov? So basically, and again, this is really the same question. Hasidus, or say the interdimensional Torah as well, but for sure Hasidus, is compared to coals. It's also compared to pearls. It's compared to coals in that in the summer, you don't need to put coals in your fire pit. It's warm. As it gets colder, you start putting a few coals. As it gets colder, you put more. So if we're looking at the world from the giving of the Torah, there was a lot of warmth. There was a lot of God's light. So Hasidus wasn't revealed, and Kabbalah was very, very, very secretive. As I said, it came out after the destruction of the temple because we really needed it. It got really cold, really fast, but then it closed up again. And then in the 1500s, when Reb Yitzchak Luria, when Isaac Luria is sharing it, it's because the world's getting a lot colder. Like now we need to start lighting those fires. But again, putting in perspective everything I was saying about the danger of sharing God's inner secrets, we're just putting out what we need to put out, not any coals more. And as time went on, we needed more and we needed more. And that's why we had Hasidus. And that's why 2 generations later, we get Chabad Hasidus. And it's been 7 generations of Chabad Hasidus, and more secrets have spilled that they didn't know 5 generations ago, and they didn't know 6 generations ago, and they didn't know 7 generations ago. We are far less spiritual, holy than those people, if we want to go back to 7 generations. But we know a lot of secrets they didn't know because we need it. The other version of the story, and both are true, both are said in the same talk, the same explanation. Actually, this goes back to the previous Rebbe, is that Hasidus is like pearls, is like something of such preciousness and beauty. And when you're sharing beauty, also, you do it carefully. So originally, it was just a little bit came out, a little bit came out, a little bit came out. But now we're like so close to the treasure box. We're so close to all the jewels. Like imagine all the crown jewels are now going to be exposed. We're getting a lot more. And that's like the movement, not looking at the world as getting colder and colder and colder, but as getting closer and closer and closer to Mashiach. And the closer we are to Mashiach, the more the jewels are spilling out. And that's why what Rabbi Yitzchak Luria could not reveal to the world, the Baal Shem Tov could. And what the Baal Shem Tov could not, the Maggid could. And what the Maggid could not, the Alter Rebbe did, and so too in all of these generations.